What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben, and welcome back to the bench. We are here with episode number 4 for our PV-1 Ventura. Last episode, we went ahead and finished off the cockpit. We installed all the parts and pieces. We even scratch built some seat belts. We have that rear compartment that we went ahead and scratch built with some styrene and some spare parts from the Ventura. Everything is more or less where we want it, and I think we're ready to go ahead and install the cockpit into the fuselage and then button up the fuselage. Before we do that, of course, we have to double check and make sure that nothing is going to impede these two parts going together. I don't want to create any bulges or create any issues with the seams. I don't want to have to do a lot of filling and a lot of patching. So we just want to double check and make sure everything is legit. And so far on initial inspection, I don't see any trouble. I think we are pretty much right on the money. I'm going to have to check the wing spar, however, because there might be a conflict with that. But we'll go ahead and check that after the basic weathering, because we need to go ahead and weather the cockpit and weather the inside of the fuselage just to make sure that we are more or less ready to seal everything up. So to weather that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna and I'm going to take a little bit of our paint thinner. This is our standard Testors airbrush paint thinner. Nothing fancy. I'm going to mix it up and create a very light wash. Then we're going to take that wash. I'm going to go over the seat belts. I'm going to go over the inside of the fuselage walls just to kind of give it a little bit of a tint, and we'll carry on from there. So let's go ahead, give it a try, see what we can do. We are looking pretty good here. I'm not sure if it really shows up on camera, but it has a nice kind of a dirty look to it. So we're going to have to come back over that with a little bit of the AIM weathering powder, and I think we'll be done there on that. I did want to go ahead and install the rear tail wheel well, however. Now the instructions tell me to go ahead and install that rear tail wheel inside with the tail wheel compartment and then close up the fuselage around it. That would mean that our tail wheel will be hanging down below the fuselage. Now that makes me very nervous, so I don't really want to do that. So I thought I would test fit this, see if I can install that tail wheel at a later time. So let's go ahead and see. We put the fuselage together. The inside area is dry and glued in. Let's see, we fit this right through the front of the opening. And actually, yeah. There we go, guys. So just a word of advice, if you're going to go ahead and build this model, wait on this rear tail wheel until you have everything fixed up, all the seams filled, because you don't want to break this off. So you can go ahead and wait and install that after everything is all together. So now I'm going to take a little bit of our AIM weathering powder and I'm just going to kind of brush it over and around the fuselage and the cockpit. I want to kind of dirty it up just a little bit, add a little bit of shadow. Nothing too fancy because, yeah, you're not really going to see a whole bunch of detail in here, but you will see enough to know that there's a little bit of a color change. The back compartment here, I'm just going to run my brush over it. You're not going to see much of anything there, so I'm not too concerned about that. And then a little bit here on the very back sidewall in case someone looks down through that door. So now let's go ahead and move on to the windows. Now the fuselage has 3 windows, so we have to go ahead and install those now. I'm really worried about installing these and having them kind of pop out, so we're going to be using our Tamiya extra thin cement just to go ahead and make sure these are all nicely glued together. I would hate to have to try to fish a window out or trying to put that window back in or something crazy like that. So a little bit of Tamiya extra thin should help to get these guys right in there and make sure they stay put. So now let's go ahead, do the other side of the fuselage and the other windows, and so we can go ahead and start installing the cockpit itself. So we're almost ready to go ahead and install the other side of the fuselage. I went ahead and put in that bomb bay. All the windows are in. We're looking pretty decent. But before I do any of the final assemblies here, I want to make sure I can cover the inside of this bomb bay with that interior green. Again, you're going to be able to look down through that astrodome, and you might be able to look down through the turret, and you'll see that color. It'll stick out like a sore thumb, guys. So I want to go ahead and use my interior green and my Grex airbrush, and we're just going to paint over that. And I'm going to mask one of those windows to make sure I don't paint the window as well. So let's go ahead and get out the interior green by Vallejo, get out my Grex, and get that thing nice and painted. All right, much better. Everything looks awesome. I love how all the parts and pieces are the same color. We don't have any weird colors popping out. So let's go ahead and let's just install this astrodome here at the very top. Just a little bit of our Tamiya extra thin as well. I don't want to push this into the fuselage because it would be very difficult to get back up through the hole. So once that is nice and dry, we'll be able to move over to the other side of the fuselage. We'll get that all buttoned up, and wow, we are on the road to getting this thing looking like a Ventura. I'm pretty excited to see how this all turns out. So we're going to let that dry off camera a little bit, and then we'll be right back and move on to the next step. So it's probably a good idea to go ahead and check the alignment and the fit of our wing spar. We need to make sure that there isn't going to be any issue with this. So let's go ahead and clean it up, and let's dry fit it into the fuselage and see if we run across any trouble. One of my subscribers did mention to check this out, so I think they're right. Let's check this out and see how we do. So it looks like this wing spar will not fit through the hole because of the flange on the outside of the actual spar itself. So when you go ahead and slide this through, there's a little bit of a lip here that keeps it from sliding all the way through to the other side. So you have a little bit of basic wing spar extending out that'll fit into our wing and keep everything nice and stable. On the other side though, I can't get it lined up to go ahead and slide that right into that opening. So that's not a good sign. But good news, we can fix it. What we're going to do is I'm just going to take my flush cuts here and I'm just going to cut off that flange. Just going to slice it off. Take my hobby knife, make sure it's nice and reduced so I can slip this straight through. And there we go. So that's all you have to do, guys. Not a big deal, because we're going to glue it into the other side and make sure that it's not going to slide too far out. Let's go ahead and get this thing all glued up and see how she looks. All right, we are back. I've actually let the fuselage sit for about a day and a half, so we are back on the bench. It is a new day for me, same day for you. Now the fuselage is all dried and ready to go. The windows look great. I don't see any fogging. The astrodome also looks fantastic. I was able to take my finger, press it up inside, drop a little bit of glue around it, and it worked perfectly. Bomb bay is nice and secure. Our wing spars are in, and honestly, guys, we are looking great. The cockpit itself dried up nicely. You can see in there everything is beautiful. A little bit of weathering, not too much. We might want to get in there and chip a little bit before we actually install the main canopy on there, but for right now, I'm good with it. Seat belts look amazing. As careful as I was, there is a seam that runs along the fuselage where the two halves meet, especially up here in the front where these navigation lights are supposed to be installed. We do have to go ahead and create the nose. We have to work on the turret. We have to work on the wings and, of course, the rear tail, as well as the dorsal gun. We have a lot to do. So we should probably go ahead and work on the wings next and get those all dialed in and glued up. So let's go ahead and get on that wing. Now the wings are pretty decent. We have everything painted for the inside of the wheel wells, and we're looking awesome there. We do have to install a clear landing light, so we have to get to that and figure that out. We do have to clean up some of the seam lines. There was a very thick attachment point here on the front of the wing, but a little bit of work here with the jeweler files and with the X-Acto knife, we should be able to get this more or less fitting beautifully. There's not a lot of cleanup, which is really nice. Now for the landing light, I'm going to go ahead and take the clear part and I'm just going to glue that down, and then I'm going to paint the top of it a silver color. So first off, we're just going to fit it into the hole, and it's actually not as easy as you may think it is. There we go. So now we're going to take a little bit of glue, and I'm just going to arrange this and glue it down, and then we'll come back through and we're just going to paint over the top of this with a nice silver color. That's going to give us a pretty cool effect of a kind of recessed light and a reflective surface behind the light. At least that's what I'm going for. So let's go ahead and cue the time lapse, get the wings together, go ahead and paint up this landing light, and we'll see how we turn out. Fingers crossed, this should go off without a hitch. All right, everybody, the wings are together. The landing lights have been painted. Everything looks beautiful. Of course, we're not out of the woods yet. We still have a lot of other parts to assemble, like the rear tail, but more or less we are ready to go ahead and call it for today. Now, next episode, we're going to come on back and I'm going to focus on getting the rest of the sub-assemblies fixed up, like the nose and the tail, vertical stabilizers, all that good stuff. So thank you so much for watching. We will see you back here next week. And until then, stay safe, build something fun, get yourself some bench time, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.